Sat, what was the thinking on the Birch goal line play, and also, I guess, why was the thinking considering you guys had run so well to get the ball down there?
We had talked all week and practiced the play all week that once we got to a certain part of the field, we were going to run that play. And it was a good play. I think, if we ran it 10 times, it would work 8 times. That time it didn't work. I would definitely, I wish I would have gotten out of my head if I could have do-overs, just because, like you said, we'd run the ball down the field. If I had my do-overs, I would have tried to run it in, but had that in our head that we were going to, even to the point when we got down there close, we're on the headset and I'm telling them, hey, go get Birch. We wanted to make sure in our meeting the night before when we get down there to make sure we didn't lose them, because that was the first thing we were going to go to. But, yep, it didn't work, and shoot, I wish it would have, and we should have ran the ball in, that's for sure.
In the play before that with the carryon, what was sort of the play there? Because I asked Coach Beamer about it, and he said it was a run-pass option because there were some tight ends that –
Yeah, it was a run pass because we had showed the week before to carry on in that same formation. We've been working that since the spring. That was a run pass deal. They kind of got on him. It's hard to replicate. I don't think it's not fair to DK because we've never been able to replicate that speed in practice because we're not going to go hit him. And kind of got on him quick before he could, get the ball out. So he ended up getting hit there right at the line of scrimmage. But it was a run pass option.
Marcus, now 6 games into the season, I know we've seen some guys, move around. We've seen Juju obviously get maybe a few more touches, things like that. Just how much more comfort do you feel like you have right now in terms of personnel groups, guys, where that you want them, and getting the ball into guys' hands and figuring out the guys that you want to be touching the ball, regularly?
I feel great. I think I know exactly who can do what now. I know what their strengths are. It's just now making sure that we put guys in positions to be able to get the ball in their hands. I mean, it would be easy if we could just snap it and hand it, and but we're having to create different ways to get the ball on the perimeter, and sometimes there's some gymnastics to that. So now the hard part is just being multiple enough where people don't know what you're doing to get the ball in space on the perimeter.
Marcus, yesterday Luke said that he did feel like there was progress made this week with the offense. People on the outside, when they look at him, sure, statistics might tell another story. But in your opinion, and based off of what Luke's saying, what can you further explain when he says that there is progress made, especially after this week?
I think because statistically, no. You can't. Statistics, I would not say you're making any progress. But I think just the core of the group, little things that we talk about, it's all about us. It's all about what's on the inside. Like people, when you're watching the TV and stuff, you can't really see happening that wouldn't have happened when we got here in the spring. Just little things on the sideline. When I say communication, I don't mean X's and O's. I just mean communication with each other, uplifting each other. You saw guys like that would have been really easy last week to get really embarrassed early on. And in today's world, the easy things is to act like you don't care and just get beat by 100 after that first quarter. But our guys were, they were so mentally tough. They were over on the sideline. They were making adjustments. They were encouraging each other, and they just kept fighting and kept fighting. And, early in the second half, was trying to make a run to try to make a game of it. So I think that's probably what he was talking about, just the development and the growth from a leadership, from an accountability, from a step forward of how important this game is to us and what we had to do moving forward to win the games.
Sat, last week you utilized the fullback some in that first quarter. How do you think those guys played, and is it something that you'll keep doing as the season progresses?
Definitely. Yeah, Trey Jones, I thought he did a really nice job. He can move for a big guy, and he loves wearing 44. There's all kinds of funny little stories with that last week, but he got to take his knee braces off in practice, and he was flying around. But he did a nice job, and I think that's a package that we can continue to grow as the season goes on. It's good to get Kevin Harris, downhill, like we talked about last week, getting under center and getting him downhill.
No, obviously you'll call plays for certain guys, and for whatever reason the ball doesn't get to them. Are there any guys just kind of in general across the board that you feel like this last half of the season that you need to emphasize trying to get plays for him and get touches for him?
Yeah, I think Jaheim Bell, like you saw, when he gets the ball in space, he's different than anybody on the field. And so we have to get the ball to guys like him. He's special. We got a bunch of kids that can do really good things out on the perimeter. We just have to make sure that everybody's functioning as one, and we can get the ball to them. If it's not a handoff, we can throw it to them, and we can format different ways to get them the ball in space.
And as far as the running game seemingly getting on track at times last week, how confident do you feel that things are kind of building there, and moving sort of in the right direction?
I mean, I feel confident. I get what the picture looks like when you're watching it from the outside. It's getting better. We're less negative yards plays. I felt like we got in flow, like you said, in the game the other day. We got a couple of drives going where we were getting in flow early on. So I think it's going in the right direction as it should as the season goes on and we play together and we learn each other and everybody stays, within this offense. So I think, hopefully it continues to grow. I feel like it's in the right direction.
Marcus, and a follow-up to that, kind of stole my question a little bit, but when you went back and watched the film from the Tennessee game, what were those differences that you noticed from, say, game one versus last weekend, just in terms of being able to kind of get Kevin going a little bit, not having those negative yardage plays? What were those differences?
Crazy little things. Just blocking the right guy, blocking the guy. Footwork. We talked a couple weeks ago, like the Kentucky game, we had a couple issues with just the landmark, footwork, and execution of the handoff from the gun. We've worked and we've cleaned that up. I think it's getting the back on track, and he's hitting his landmarks more consistently. And I think just Kevin, especially as Kevin is playing, he'd been banged up a little bit. The more he plays, the looser he gets, the more in tune he gets. So I think all those things play into it. I think guys get better. They practice more. They get better. They get more confident. It's not new schemes to them at all. It's things that we've been doing now for over a month and a half, 2 months. So I think they're just getting, they're kind of not hitting their stride, but they're moving, again, like I said earlier, in the right direction.
Marcus, a lot was made about EJ after the Troy game. And obviously, I think carryon, Josh, and Jalen played the bulk of snaps as a wide receiver. When you're building a game plan, how do you kind of see his role, and when do you decide, maybe in a game or in practice, okay, this is when we want to use him and this is when we don't?
He has certain plays, especially down in the red zone and situational, where he'll have a personnel group named after him. Other than that, it's really just to feel with just throughout the game. If Josh is rolling and Josh is not tired and doesn't need a break, he's going to be out there. And as soon as he needs a break, EJ rolls in there. And then obviously, like I said, there's certain situations will get EJ activated within a game.
You've talked before, Shane's talked before about so many plays being so close to breaking and going y'all's way. What gives you confidence over these next 6 games that y'all are going to start hitting on those plays and getting a little bit more offensive production?
You just had to keep doing it. You had to keep, trusting it. We talk about, Coach Saban talks about trusting the process. You got to trust everything that we're doing, trust what we're practicing, trust the plays, trust the players. We just had to keep going, keep our head down, and keep working, and eventually it's going to crack. It's not a magic. There's not a magic wand you can wave over it at this point. You just have to keep working and have to keep getting better. Which I know that's the boring statement that everybody says, but like we tell our guys, there's all kinds of slogans that are kind of corny that that coaches put on their walls and stuff. But the ironic thing are all those slogans are true most of the time. So we just have to keep working, and eventually the breaks are going to go our way. And when that happens, we'll ride off that success, and hopefully we'll just keep growing and growing.
You mentioned Trey getting to wear 44. Is that something that he does for Sherrod, for Hank Aaron? Just what's the stories behind that?
I think that was just the only available 40s number that we had. I wish I had I can make his great grandfather was a Major League Baseball player. He was I don't know. I wish there was a story there. I'm sorry, but there really wasn't.
Marcus, a couple reserve offensive linemen got in at the end of that Tennessee game. How do you feel like they played, and are you anticipating doing a lot of that rotating again for this weekend? Yeah,
we went into the game saying, Coach Beamer came in on early last week, and I said, hey, let's get those young guys in the first half, in second or third drive, if you all think that they, it's not going to be a huge drop-off, just to build depth, because they've been practicing really well. And, offensive lines usually stay in there, and they usually stay as one. But so we made a commitment to get them in early. Obviously, the game went a little nutty in the first quarter, and we're all just kind of trying to pull everything back together. So we didn't get them in, as early as we wanted to, but it was good at the end to get them in, just for them to get playing time. And they practiced so hard, and they practiced really well, and then that showed in the game. I think they played. There wasn't a huge drop-off when they went in there, and I think that's going to help us to build depth moving forward, because that we're going to need them. There's going to be injuries, people get beat up, so we're going to need them moving forward, and hopefully we can continue to do that as we go through the season.
I guess you've used the carryon at quarterback package now for the first half of the season. What do you feel like you've gotten out of that package, and what is the thinking, I guess, behind it, putting so many running backs back there to kind of skew some numbers maybe in the run game?
I hope I interpreted your question right. The carry-on quarterback package, I don't think that I've gotten as much as I wanted to going into the season. It went from we were going to have him ready to play quarterback throughout the, in and out, and now I've turned it into more of a situational type deal with him. So I thought I would use that more, and it ended up I didn't. And then obviously when you got a young quarterback like Luke, maximizing his reps, and then when you get Zeb, when Zeb came on board, then having to get him ready, I think that really kind of pushed the carry-on quarterback thing not to the side, but it lessened the amount of reps we could get him during practice. So I would have envisioned, I'm not disappointed, but I would have envisioned 3 months ago that him having a little bit more of a quarterback feel to this offense, but it didn't work out that way. As far as the running backs, I didn't interpret that question, I don't think.
I know Baltimore kind of does something similar where they try to stack too many ball carriers.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, just trying to get, again, just get roles for those guys, and it's a different body. It's not a tight end. It's not a receiver, so the defense has to account for them a little differently, and they all have a skill set that whether they're catching the ball, they can run the ball, they can block. It allows you to be, very multiple when multiple running backs are in the game.
What did you think of Luke on Saturday? Good, bad? Like, what are some of the things, I guess, that you can build on?
I thought he played good. There's a lot of things that us as a staff, as me, as every player out there can improve on. And I think he would tell you the same thing. I mean, there's some plays out there I'm sure he would like to have back that he can make, that I know he can make. But I think that, he's continuing to get better, just operating the offense, calling the plays at the line of scrimmage, getting in and out of a huddle, throwing the forward pass, things that, he didn't get to do a lot last year. I think he's improving on that.
Sad, I guess, just across football when it comes to play calling, a lot of people talk about having a feel for the game. One, do you, I guess, believe in that, subscribe to that? And two, how do you think you've done through 6 games in that?
I think having a feel is huge. Yeah. I mean, contrary to, we're not putting up 700 yards a game and scoring 600 points a game. I get that. I feel like I do have a really good feel. I have a really good feel for our team, and I have a really good feel for how to, at least get our games into the fourth quarter. I think at this point early on in our tenure here, as we start here at South Carolina, I think that, you could go out there and you could try to put up points, and you could try to put up a lot of yards, and you could put your defense in some really bad situations. And you can also fumble quarterback center exchanges and put them in bad situations as well. But, I think we play the game smart, and I think I do have a feel for it. And I think as we get older, as we get more mature, as we start making plays and breaking those runs, like you said, I think, you can start to take maybe a little bit more chances here and there. But even with that said, I mean, we're throwing the ball down the field and feel like that, we're progressing. At the end of this whole thing, whenever we got this thing going where we want it, shoot, I can't wait to see that. But as far as your question, do I have a feel? Yes, I have a feel. That was a long answer to that question. Thank you.
Back to Luke for a second, kind of a little bit of a broader question, just from beyond a knowledge standpoint, beyond just learning the system. Where have you seen the most growth from Luke on the field since you got here? It seems like he's come a long way just as a passer and just as a quarterback from year 1 to year 2, beyond just the experience, beyond just the playbook. Where have you seen his most growth?
I think passing the football in the pocket. I watched him last year, and Coach Bobo didn't ask him to do a lot in the pocket. They moved him around, sprint outs, nakeds, keepers, trick plays, things like that. I think just him being able to execute. I mean, I say this, and we are operating an offense that they operate on Sundays, and so a lot of our passing concepts you can watch on Sunday nights and on Thursday night football. And he's able to go in there and execute the protection and go through the progression and get the balls out and get completions, which when I got here and watched him play the first time on tape, he wasn't getting a chance to do that. And when we started this thing, it was kind of new to him. And just to watch him progress from the spring through the summer to where he is now, I think he's doing a really nice job. I was telling him the other day, we can't keep saying, well, this is only his 5th start and this is only his 6th start. There's a time where he's got to just go. And I think he's risen. He's attacking that mindset. But I'd say throwing the football right now. He keeps getting a little bit better each week. Thank you, guys.